Democrats seem to be having this debate whether or not Maher Mamdani is a socialist or a democratic socialist. Let me settle it. He's a straight-up communist. How do I know this? Well, I'm reading between the lines when one of his major advisors says, elect more communists.
Liberal host, liberal crowd, and Bill Maher looked straight into the camera and labeled the rising star of his own party a flat-out communist, not as a punchline but as a serious caution. Here is the background. Mondaire Jones is the newest political sensation on the left, the man many Democrats are marketing as a clean, likable changemaker. Maher is not convinced by the rebranding, and over the following few minutes he dismantles the entire democratic socialist movement piece by piece. The catchphrases, the numbers, the gatherings, all of it. If you have ever felt like one party keeps drifting somewhere you never agreed to go, this will hit home. Quick request before we get into it. Hit subscribe because this channel survives on these analyses and the algorithm only pushes you more content if you do. Because the frightening part is not the communist tag, it is his reasoning for why pretending it is not happening is precisely how Democrats keep failing.
It's fine. It's a belief system. He's allowed to believe it and people are allowed to vote for it. But if liberals deny it, like he's just going through a goth phase, they're going to lose more elections. This is not a communist country.
Notice the tactic. He gives Mondaire complete freedom, then sets the trap. Believe whatever you like, campaign on it, that is democracy. The blade is in the second part. The goth phase comment is not really directed at Mondaire at all. It targets everyone above him who pretends the radicalism is an outfit he will eventually discard. Maher's position is the reverse. This is not a temporary stage the party is passing through. It is a destination the party is being dragged toward. Now, is communist the accurate word? Many on the left would argue he is mixing up socialist with communist for impact, and they would have a fair point about the terminology. But remove the label and his core argument still holds. Ignore what your own voters are choosing and do not act surprised when they choose it regardless. Watch who he says is actually controlling the direction.
It matters that the mayor stands by, and so I assume stands with, someone who says things like, if you don't believe in the government's sacred right to seize private property, it's over. Seize private property. Home ownership is racist. Elect more communists. Private property, especially home ownership, is a weapon of white supremacy. Really? Even among the 20 million black Americans who own their own home?
Quick but important, those quotes are not Mamdani's. They are lines Maher pins on the people surrounding him, the ones who say the loud things openly while the candidate stays camera ready. And weapon of white supremacy crashes straight into a wall. 20 million black Americans own their homes, so is their property value also a tool of white supremacy? The slogan cannot survive its own reasoning. That is the problem with much of this language. It sounds powerful in a debate and falls apart the moment it meets a real household with a home loan. The catchphrases are not the real threat. The threat comes when the people using them gain actual control over your housing. So how do we know where that path leads? Maher says we have already conducted the experiment.
I know the kids think that stuff that happened before their appearance on the planet didn't really happen, but it did. We've run this experiment many times, and the results are always obvious. Here's capitalist South Korea at night from space. Here's socialist North Korea. Yeah. In 1990, Venezuela was wealthier than Poland. But then Poland, finally free of Soviet-style economics, went all in on capitalism. And now their economy is as big as Japan. And people there have high wages, low inflation, cars, vacations, homes. Meanwhile, Venezuela traded capitalism for Hugo Chavez's Socialism for the 21st Century, which turned out to be like socialism in the last century, or any century. F***ing mess.
The satellite image makes the entire argument in a single frame. South Korea lit up like a circuit board, North Korea a dark void with only a capital city glowing. Same people, same land, two different economic systems, one of them visible from outer space. I will note one thing to keep things balanced. A few of his comparisons run a bit extreme. Poland has done impressively well, but it is not quite on equal footing with Japan. The overall direction, however, is accurate. Poland chose open markets and rose. Venezuela chose Chavez and collapsed into shortages and runaway inflation. The reason this resonates is the audience. He is speaking to younger voters who treat socialism like a fresh concept no one has ever tested. His response is essentially, we have the evidence, decades worth of it, which set up his sharper observation that the people pushing this agenda are not even genuine Democrats.
Bernie, AOC, Mamdani are not Democrats. They'll be the first to tell you that. They're democratic socialists, and that's a very different thing, and I don't think people know that yet. All that is socialism, much of it appropriate to soften the edges of capitalism, but the DSA are radicals about this concept, and radical economic policy is always ineluctably married to radical social policy. Their platform, for example, calls for completely open borders. They're for what Biden was doing, but more. You think you're going to win an election on that?
Here is the distinction most voters are never told. Bernie AOC Mamdani, they do not identify as Democrats. They call themselves Democratic Socialists, and they say it proudly. The party simply allows the two to blend together on the ballot. Watch him concede ground first, softening capitalism's rougher edges. He is fine with that. Social Security, Medicare already built in. His concern is the jump from softening the edges to tearing out the entire foundation. Then he connects the economics to the social agenda and delivers the part that truly decides elections. Open borders, more aggressive than Biden's approach. Whatever your view on the policy, it is electoral poison in competitive districts, and he is aware of that. Which leads directly to the question every one of these plans eventually crashes against. The free everything question that no one on stage wants to answer publicly.
The top 10% pay 72% of all federal income taxes, and the bottom half, 3%. The Democratic Socialists talk about socialism like we don't already have a lot. Social Security, unemployment, Medicare, nutritional assistance, Medicaid, Obamacare, disability, housing subsidies. Again, not against it, just the same question. How can you be soaking the rich and failing the poor so badly?
That closing question is the one that truly stings, and it points at his own side. The figures are roughly accurate. The top tier of earners genuinely does carry the bulk of the federal income tax burden, so that the rich do not pay their fair share chant hits a wall. By that standard, they are already pulling the weight, which flips the entire debate. If we are already running Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, Obamacare, food and housing assistance, and the wealthy are already covering most of it, then the real question was never how do we extract more. It is where is the money we already collect actually going? That is a far more uncomfortable conversation, and it is one nobody runs a campaign on. So what happens when you attempt to squeeze harder? Maher's answer is direct. You do not drain the rich, you drive them away.
But here's the truth. You're not going to get health care to these people by threatening to tax and eat the rich. You raise billionaires' taxes, they just leave the state. Or they leave the country. Or in some cases, the planet. I kid Elon, but he had a good idea recently that might be apropos here. During the recent government shutdown, he volunteered to pay all the TSA workers himself, with couch money. That's how super rich our super rich are. They can single-handedly fund entire government programs. Okay, so let's make that a thing.
Or in certain cases, off the planet entirely. The joke lands because the vanishing billionaire problem is completely genuine minus the rocket ship. Wealth moves in ways it never could before. Pressure it in one state and it does not push back, it simply relocates. You do not need to speculate about this. California and New York have been losing high-income residents to Florida and Texas for years, and that tax revenue left right along with them. So the core promise of tax the rich carries a built-in flaw. The wealthier the target, the simpler the escape. He is essentially warning his own party that you cannot fund a generous government by driving away the very people funding it. Then he pulls back completely, past the numbers, to what voters are genuinely begging both parties to deliver.
This just seems like more extremism at a time when Americans are begging both parties, please, could just one of you act normal? It's either defund the police or military in the streets. Either MAGA's crypto crony capitalism or city-run grocery stores. No, I don't want that. I want a Democrat who reassures me if you like your Whole Foods, you can keep your Whole Foods.
COVID test at the entrance in 2025 to attend a political convention. Whatever your view on the pandemic, that detail reveals something about a mindset, a movement still trapped inside the most anxious version of 2021 while asking the country to hand it power. The rest of the world moved forward. The convention clearly did not. And it is not just one odd requirement. It is an attitude, a sense that the entire operation is built around protecting feelings instead of solving real problems. His mockery here is not cruelty, it is strategy. He is showing his party exactly how it appears from the outside to that ordinary voter from the earlier clip. Because if you think the COVID test is the unusual part, wait until you hear how attendees were permitted to applaud. These democratic socialists at one of their conventions were instructed to use jazz hands instead of clapping, so that no delegate would experience sensory discomfort.
Governor-elect Spanberger once said about Biden's presidency that, quote, nobody elected him to be FDR. They elected him to be normal. Normal! You know, at this year's DSA convention, or as it's commonly known, Comic-Con, get this, you had to submit a photo of a negative COVID test to get in. In 2025. Yeah, no one wants to do that again. We've had enough of Trump's macho and also enough of politics.
No clapping, jazz hands, no cologne, it might overwhelm someone, and he insists he is not inventing this. On its own, it is a joke. Stacked on the COVID test, it becomes a pattern, and that is the true message. A political movement so committed to comfort and caution that it cannot tolerate applause or assent. Now picture that same instinct managing a police department, a housing market, or a city budget. That is the gap he keeps returning to all evening. The image is gentle, flexible, and caring. The actual agenda underneath, abolish property, open the borders, tax until people escape, is anything but gentle. The soft exterior is precisely what makes the severe policy so easy to overlook, which is the entire reason he is standing there sounding the alarm. Remove the humor, and Maher is telling his own team one genuinely uncomfortable truth. The greatest danger to the Democratic Party is not Donald Trump. It is the Democratic Party itself. His full argument from beginning to end is a chain. Attach a welcoming label to extreme ideas, treat it like a passing trend, promise everything at no cost, pay for it by pushing away the people who fund it. Wrap it all in conventions that outlaw clapping, then act shocked when the average voter in the middle walks away once more, the same voter who already walked in 2024. What makes it land is who is delivering it. This is not an outsider attacking the left, it is a lifelong liberal grabbing his own party by the collar before 2028. So here is what I genuinely want to know. Is Maher the last straight-talking adult on the left, or simply someone who does not understand where his party is headed? Drop your thoughts in the comments, I read every one. If this resonates, hit like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.